In December 1943, at the height of the harsh Russian winter, vigilant border guards stationed at a checkpoint on the strategically important Novgorod-Moscow road noticed two suspicious individuals. Emerging seemingly from nowhere out of the snow-covered forest, the pair made their way on foot towards the front lines, immediately arousing the suspicion of the experienced guards. Noticing the checkpoint and realizing they might be stopped, the men, both dressed in officer uniforms, became visibly nervous and momentarily slowed their pace. One of them carried a map case, and a Nagant revolver holster could be seen on his belt. The other had a rather bulky duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Both were equipped with gas masks, which, however, wasn't unusual given the wartime conditions and the proximity of the front. To verify their identities, they presented travel orders, supposedly issued by the headquarters of the 225th Rifle Division in the names of officers Vasilyev and Brovkin. However, a seasoned border guard's eye immediately caught a discrepancy. The document lacked a special identification mark that had been recently introduced and was mandatory for all such documents. This was the first serious red flag. Authorized to inspect the belongings of everyone passing through the checkpoint, the border guards immediately commenced their search. Inside the duffel bag of one of the detainees, cleverly concealed beneath an inconspicuous layer of food, was a portable radio, an extremely suspicious item in the hands of individuals heading towards the front lines. And in pouches initially mistaken for standard gas mask cases were batteries for the radio and additional food supplies. But the most valuable find was the contents of the map case. A detailed topographical map of the right bank of the Fokhov River, specifically detailed in the area where units of the 59th Army were deployed. There was practically no doubt left. The border guards were facing enemy agents. The detainees were immediately taken to the SMERSH Military Counterintelligence Directorate of the Fokhov Front for a thorough investigation. Subscribe to our channel and like the video to not miss other fascinating stories about World War II and hear different perspectives on the events of those years. The investigation of this complex and potentially dangerous case, as well as the interrogation of the detainees, was personally overseen by the Deputy Chief of the SMERSH Counterintelligence Department of the 59th Army, the experienced and astute officer Sergei Mihailovich Alexeyev. By the next day, thanks to the coordinated and swift work of the counterintelligence officers, it became abundantly clear. The personnel records of the 225th Rifle Division contained no officers with such names and ranks, and no one had issued the travel documents specified in the forged orders. Moreover, a thorough check revealed that the presented identification cards were also forgeries. Under the undeniable pressure of the evidence and the masterfully conducted interrogation, Brovkin was the first to break under the psychological strain and confess. He recounted how he had been trained at a secret school for radio operators and scouts located in the Latvian town of Strenci, which had the operational call sign Mars. His partner, Vasilyev, had undergone similar training in the Estonian town of Valga, an officer of German military intelligence. Abwehr Commando 104 had introduced them and brought them together for joint operations. He had supplied Vasilyev with a set of forged documents, a weapon, a detailed topographical map of the area, and Brovkin with a portable radio. The objective of their mission was to gather intelligence on the plans for the upcoming Fokhov front offensive. After taking off from a clandestine airfield near Pskov and being covertly dropped near the very road where they were subsequently apprehended, they had only managed to briefly inform the German command of their successful arrival. Their further activities were thwarted by the vigilance of the Soviet border guards. To successfully accomplish their assigned task, Vasilyev and Brovkin were to infiltrate unnoticed into one of the military units deployed in the Novgorod direction. On their way to the front lines, they were instructed to pay particular attention to any movements of tank and artillery units. Try to engage in casual conversations with soldiers, ascertaining their direction of movement, the names of commanders, and any other information of interest to German intelligence. All gathered information was to be transmitted daily via radio using the call sign Mars. They were allotted 1 week to carry out this dangerous mission, after which they planned to secretly return across the front lines to territory controlled by German forces. Concurrent with the interrogations of the detainees, counterintelligence officers were actively searching for and interrogating German intelligence agents who had previously surrendered. The purpose of these interrogations was to establish who Vasilyev and Brovkin had impersonated during their time in German captivity. This painstaking work bore fruit. Valuable information was obtained that the detainees would likely not have disclosed voluntarily, only after fully realizing their hopeless situation and the inevitability of severe punishment did the agents, in the faint hope of leniency, decide to give truthful testimonies. It turned out that Vasilyev, recruited by German intelligence and sent behind Soviet lines for espionage activities, did not believe in the Red Army's victory and willingly collaborated with the enemy. Despite this, he ended up in a POW camp, where, continuing his treacherous activities, he betrayed a Soviet intelligence officer to the German authorities afterward. Vasilyev was sent to the intelligence school in Valga for specialized training. For some time, he trained skier saboteurs in another Abwehr group, and in October 1943, again in Valga, he began preparing for deployment behind Soviet lines together with Brovkin. Brovkin, on the other hand, embarked on the path of betrayal at the very beginning of the war. As a cadet at a military academy, he was panicked by the prospect of being sent to the front and resorted to self-harm, shooting himself in the palm. For this crime, a military tribunal sentenced him to 10 years imprisonment, but the sentence was commuted to frontline service. At the first encounter with the enemy, Brovkin cowardly surrendered and began actively working for German intelligence, participating in punitive operations against partisans and civilians. Afterward, he underwent training at the radio operator school of Abwehr Commando 104 and was deployed behind the front lines together with Vasilyev. These men not only betrayed their motherland, but also, through their actions, condemned many Soviet citizens to death. A military tribunal sentenced them to a just punishment according to the laws of wartime. That same month, using the same method of infiltration, 2 more saboteurs disguised as Red Army soldiers attempted to cross the neutral zone. They called themselves Polikarpov and Boyko, and identifying themselves as Abwehr agents, demanded that the combat security detail that detained them immediately escort them to the special department. Their task was to infiltrate the village of Borki and, through observation and conversations with soldiers, ascertain the numbers and locations of military units. This group was also equipped with a topographical map, and they were given only 4 days to complete the assignment, after which they were to return via the same route. Boyko and Polikarpov provided crucial information that the Germans planned to deploy 2 more groups of saboteurs in the near future. They were able to describe the appearance and provide the names of 4 agents, but they didn't know the exact location and method of their transfer. Sergei Alexeyev immediately reported the received information to Colonel Alexei Alexeyevich Isakov, who, in turn, related to the SMERSH Directorate of the Front. Wanted posters of the sought-after agents were distributed to all military units, and briefings and educational talks were conducted among the soldiers, urging increased vigilance and caution. As a result of the measures taken, in early January 1944, both groups of German agents were successfully apprehended thanks to the heightened vigilance of Soviet servicemen. Playing it safe, or perhaps wanting to guarantee the success of their intelligence operation, the German command dispatched several groups of saboteurs via different routes, but with the same mission: to reconnoiter the concentration of Soviet troops and identify preparations for a potential offensive. However, all their efforts proved futile thanks to the effective work of Soviet counterintelligence. On the night of January 14, 1944, the Red Army launched a decisive offensive and crossed Lake Ilmen, beginning the liberation of the occupied territories. At dawn, units of the 2nd Shock Army of the Leningrad Front joined the battle, delivering a crushing blow to enemy positions and commencing the final stage of lifting the siege of Leningrad, simultaneously with them. But north of Novgorod, the 59th Army of the Fokhov Front went on the offensive, making its invaluable contribution to the common cause of defeating the enemy. By January 20th, overcoming fierce German resistance, the two Soviet groupings successfully linked up west of Novgorod and, with a powerful joint strike, completely liberated the city from the Nazi invaders. Testimonies of captured German officers later confirmed that the sudden offensive of the 59th Army came as a complete surprise to them. This testified to the brilliantly conducted work of the counterintelligence officers of the Army and the entire Fokhov Front, who made an enormous contribution to achieving the overall victory. Goodbye. We were glad to see you on our channel. Don't forget to leave comments, like, and subscribe to the channel.